Hey there, this is Matt with State Flux, here with the ranking of the Oz movies. That's right, with Wicked coming out this weekend, I thought I would take a look back at the road to Wicked for Good and rank all the theatrically released live-action films. I know there's a lot of TV movies, animated works, and all sorts of things in the way of Oz, including a Muppet movie, if memory serves. But I decided to focus my energies on reviewing the theatrically released live-action adaptations of L. Frank Baum's works. So I'm going to give you my ranking of these movies. So we're talking about really 5 movies here. So in the 5th spot, I put my least favorite one is The Wiz. This movie just really isn't for me, and I know that I'm not necessarily the audience that film is geared towards, but there's no real songs that stick out for me. The type of music just doesn't really gel for me either. And shy of a relatively magnetic Michael Jackson, none of the actors seem fit for their role. They all seem a little green, if you will. And not necessarily super comfortable in their own skin in camera. They're great while they're singing, but if they're not singing, they just feel a little static and not really like authentic actors, a lot of them. But while watching this, I was kind of shocked that Michael Jackson didn't have more of a widespread filmic career, because he had screen presence up the wazoo. He is so incredibly magnetic throughout the entire thing, and really, honestly, one of my favorite renditions of a Scarecrow character. So, yeah, there you have it. I was impressed with Michael Jackson in The Wiz, but otherwise The Wiz just isn't for me. I know this one has some hardcore love, and if the music works for you, the music works for you. It just didn't for me. In the number 4 spot, we have the nightmare fuel that is Return to Oz. Return to Oz is a Disney film out of the 80s when they really decided to focus their energies on scaring the absolute crap out of children. There is no moment in the film that isn't like with a horror lean, and because of that, I do feel like this film is a fair introduction to the horror genre for children. I too watched it when I was young, and I remember being unsettled by a couple things here and there. The hallway full of heads that the witch puts on to change her face was always a pretty jarring image. But this is the same era that gave us like films like Witches and The Never-Ending Story, and like there are many films that aren't horror films for kids, but they are essentially horror films for kids, and they will give them existential crises, as this film does. This film literally opens with Dorothy Gale, who's reduced in age to be, say, 11 or so, as she is in the book. I think she's like 8 or something in the book. They reduce her age from the Dorothy we know in The Wizard of Oz to being a young child who is getting strapped and electroded in her brain to fix her psyche. And it comes dangerously close to happening. While we were watching this scene, my 3-year-old daughter started to kind of panic, and we had to reassure her that it was only a movie and it was okay. But it's weird that the Disney film is the one that goes super hard. We'll circle back to the Disney of it all fairly soon, I imagine. But Return of Oz is not necessarily a bad movie. It's an interesting one. It's a bad sequel to The Wizard of Oz. It kind of does the same thing that that Prince Caspian does to the first Chronicles of Narnia story. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and Wizard of Oz have this very magnificent feel to them. Everything is epic in scope and wide and wondrous, and yes, there's an evil witch in both of these stories, and yes, that evil witch is scary, but evil is conquered, and it leaves on a note of hope and happiness, and it's a swell of like excitement. And both Prince Caspian and this have your character journey back to the place that they once found a kind of happiness, their escape place, only to discover that it is in ruins. Years have passed and everybody they once loved is gone. And that makes for a pretty jarring experience. This film also simultaneously, while being a bigger movie than the 1930s version of Wizard of Oz, it is also a film that is feels smaller and more like insular. It's never grander in scope, yet it feels like it is a bigger movie because the budget is bigger and whatnot. Yet that budget doesn't seem to have gone to the way of the look of the thing. It's not great looking like that original Wizard of Oz is, and they had that Disney money. Of course, that Disney money in the 80s is nowhere near the Disney money that we have now. Again, we'll circle back to that. But what you do get is a film that's kind of ugly, and like when my daughter saw the Scarecrow in Return to Oz, my 10-year-old, she was like, "What is it? Get it off the screen." She was horrified at the prospect of this being the Scarecrow. She really did not appreciate the look of these characters, right down to even like the Tin Man and stuff. When you do get the older characters to come back, they don't look as good as they did in that old movie. And I know they couldn't do the exact ones, and they harkened a little closer to what the original Frank Baum illustrated versions of these Wizard of Oz books look like. But when you're being raised with this is how they look for so long, and then you see this nightmare fuel, it's crazy. That said, we do get introduced to some other great characters, like Jack Pumpkinhead, who's one of my favorite characters in all of the Oz lore, as well as Tick-Tock, who's awesome. He's kind of just a repainted Tin Man, but you know what? As is like Jack Pumpkinhead for when it comes to that. But I like these characters. Toto's kind of there, but then he's not, and instead we have a talking chicken, or hen. And yeah, it's kind of the same thing again, except scarier, meaner, and lacking the whimsy or fun, which is why I think a lot of people don't love it, but there is an audience out there that does love this film. I've talked a lot about Return to Oz, and we have several more films to go, so we're going to move from Return to Oz to Oz the Great and Powerful. Now, I saw this movie back when it came out, again, a Disney film, back in 2013 when they had that Disney money that has a little more meaning to our present day standards. And I remember liking it. I've always been a Sam Raimi guy, so I thought his visual flair lent well to the film. But upon this rewatch of it, I was truly blown away. I really, really liked this. I thought the performances of the witches and a lot of the side characters, Zach Braff does his best work, I think, ever, in my opinion, as the little bellhop monkey. You have a great Joey King as the little China doll, and they are great additions to the Oz lore. I love the Glinda of this film, is pretty good. Theodora, I believe, is the Wicked Witch played by Mila Kunis, who looks great leading into her Wicked Witch. Like the pre-Wicked Witch stuff, she just looks fantastic and flawlessly beautiful out of like a 30s or 40s film, only to then become the Wicked Witch that we're familiar with and be this like larger-than-life presence, and that's something you've never really seen from Mila Kunis, and she gave a really good performance. I know some people online kind of ding her performance, but I think a lot of people honestly are sleeping on this movie, because I too was not necessarily in love with it when I first saw it back when, but revisiting it now, I think this is a fantastic prequel to the original Wizard of Oz film from the 1930s. Visually, they get the thing to match quite a bit. This is a great film that makes use of color in an era that everything was saturated and with like the either Marvel look or the DCEU look of desaturated image, muted colors, and this film was the counterpart to that, or the counter-programming to all of that. It is bright and grand and colorful on a scale that would make the original film proud, and that really works for me. I already talked about how great Sam Raimi's visual flair brings to the film, but there is some really impressive camera work and stuff going on. Not only that, this film has some pretty interesting practical effects and some great integration of visual effects, and the visual effects, well, very kind of green screeny, work for this world. Oz is a world you can do that with, and I think they do great things that harken back to the qualities of that original Wizard of Oz film, but do their own thing with it. I really thought that the ending of the film is live and vibrant and like the thrill of adventure, while also being kind of a creative way to take down the witches, and yet lead up for more stories with them, a la The Wizard of Oz. It all works. The one big and admittedly damning flaw of Oz the Great and Powerful is the James Franco of it all. Not only has he made the film kind of hard to watch in the present day, considering all of his Me Too-iness, you also get the fact that he's just not right for this part. The part requires a scoundrel kind of character with a heart of gold, a la Bruce Campbell in Army of Darkness. It feels like it's the extension of the same character. Somebody who's kind of a womanizer, who like deep down might be kind of okay, but is just kind of a brutish idiot that you're wanting to see fail until he finds within himself the reason to be the good guy or to be the hero. And as written and on paper, you'd think, well, yeah, James Franco is kind of a scuzzball. I get how he would work for that character, but he just doesn't. He doesn't sell the heart of gold side of it. He sells the skeeziness of the character, but he doesn't ever win you over with the qualities of the character. Ever in the film. He never brings out the charm at all, and it's not lost on me that this role wasn't originally given to him. He took it after Robert Downey Jr. had scheduling conflicts with his MCU work and had to drop out. But Robert Downey Jr. would have definitely been able to sell this. He has, as with Tony Stark, the skis-ball kind of quality, while also being a charming, likable guy that can be won over and can win you over in spite of what you know about him. And Franco just doesn't have that. And if I'm being quite honest, I don't even know if Robert Downey Jr. would have been able to sell it half as well as Bruce Campbell would have. If this had been made in the 90s, Bruce Campbell would have been pitch perfect for this role and given probably the performance of his career as this character, because you can just listen to the lines of dialogue that James Franco has to say and almost hear Bruce Campbell saying them. So the only real problem I have with Oz the Great and Powerful is that your lead actor, your Oz, is the least watchable thing in this otherwise remarkable movie that I think is really good and stands almost shoulder to shoulder with my number 2 pick, The Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz is fantastic, and yes, I am a little shocked that I don't have this at number 1, which speaks more to the qualities of the number 1 that I have forthcoming, but The Wizard of Oz stands the test of time, and this and my number 1 choice are essentially interchangeable as to my favorite. They neither can work, it's like the Voldemort prophecy, neither can live while the other survives. They both have the same existence in my heart. But The Wizard of Oz is a magnetically beautiful film. Gorgeously shot, stunningly executed with its visual effects, its wide, whimsical storytelling. Everything about it seems to be firing on all cylinders. The performances of all of your leads, a beautiful Dorothy Gale, Judy Garland is phenomenal, but then you have the Scarecrow, who I just absolutely adore that character, and the man bringing him to life is ever so perfect. Then you also have a great Tin Man, a great Cowardly Lion. My wife was just giggling along to the film, watching it, rewatching it, at how great the Cowardly Lion is, and watching this film with my kids was kind of wonderful. My older daughter had seen it once before, but didn't really seem to remember it, and she was latching onto things here and there and giggling all the way. And enjoying it. But it was my younger daughter that, when it goes from the transition of black and white to color, literally gasped out loud and said, "Wow!" when it turns from the sepia to the full color with that beautiful shot of opening the door into this magical world. The effect still holds weight nearly 100 years later. How cool is that? Everything about this film is just grand. It's a visual feast from front to back, right to left. Just as George Lucas described the original Star Wars film as having a camera pulled back most of the time because he figured people were seeing things in a movie theater, so you have to have the camera pulled back because they're seeing an alien world completely new to them, and so you want your eye to be looking in a different area at a given point in time, so let's make that whole screen visually interesting. That holds true to this, and I'm sure that this is where he got that idea, because no matter where you look, especially once they get to the Emerald City, there's always new things to find. I adore the color-changing horse. That's one of my favorite gags in the film. Ever since I was my youngest daughter's age when I first watched this film, I remember being obsessed with that horse. And I'm not a horse guy, but that color-changing horse, fantastic. Yes, I know there was some skeezy stuff going on behind the scenes, and this movie would not be made the way it is, the way it was today because of all the different crazy things going on behind the scenes. But what we are left with now that all of that sad, tragic stuff is kind of in the past is a remarkable movie that holds its weight today and uses the "it was all a dream" framework the best way that I think it ever could have been used. And it, like, watching it as an adult, the first time she meets the wizard outside of, you know, Oz in the real world and stuff like that, listening to what he had to say today, I never picked up on any of that stuff back then, but now that I'm a parent and whatnot, you get that he's just trying to help her find her way back home. And creating the parallel story of the Oz stuff and the Kansas stuff is just amazing, compelling, wonderful. The way they intertwined both of those things and utilized it is just genuinely phenomenal. My only complaint about The Wizard of Oz is that between the Emerald City and the final confrontation of the Wicked Witch, your wonderful pacing kind of slows a little too much for me, and I find myself checking my watch in that back 45 minutes a little more than I ought to. Otherwise, it is a masterpiece and brilliantly executed and one of my all-time favorite films, but that leaves my favorite film of the Oz lore to be Wicked. And yes, this could be recency bias, and yes, it could be excitement for the forthcoming movie that I hear is admittedly not as good as it. But what I'm left with Wicked is the prospect of having just a tremendous two-part epic feature that is just grand on a scale unimaginable for us Oz fans. I loved that original book, The Wizard of Oz, and I like how some of the other materials kind of picked and choose what to do with, right down to, I didn't even talk about it really, but in Oz the Great and Powerful, having the China doll, and that whole scene kind of carry over, all these little things, it's great. But what Wicked did, both as a stage play and a book before it, was reinterpret the original story for a more modern and a more complex context. And I've always been a fan of that kind of storytelling. But what you also get with Wicked is filmmaking done in the style of something that you would have gotten Grande epic in the 30s and 40s, to modern sensibilities, but to relatively good music, though I'm not a huge fan of the music in Wicked. I think Wicked Part 1 has two of the greatest stage musical songs. The rest of the stuff is good, and I understand why the fan base loves it. It is just not necessarily as my cup of tea. But even with that being said, I still maintain that that movie, even though I didn't even love the music, was the best movie of 2024. And a lot of that has to do with how it was filmed, the execution of the scene, the costumes, the sets, the shot choices. But really what it comes down to is significantly amazing casting. Cynthia Erivo is one of the best actresses of her generation. And I love that this film put her on the filmic map in a way that she'd never been fully exposed. I feel like this woman deserved her Oscar accolades back when she was in Bad Times for the El Royale, but Wicked really put her on this like alternative stratosphere, and she was amazing, and I don't think anybody out there doubted her capabilities of taking the role of Elphaba and making it her own and making it a captivating one. I do think that nobody really expected Ariana Grande, probably even her fans, to take ownership of that Glinda role and do something absolutely precious with that performance. And I think Ariana Grande's performance in Wicked Part 1 is the best performance, full stop, from last year. The fact that she didn't win the Oscar still to this day devastates me. Both of these women deserve their Oscars over who ultimately won. And that's not that either of the other performances that they were up against were bad, they were both good performances, but these two deserved it. Wicked Part 1 is my favorite Oz film, and we'll see where Wicked for Good ranks on that scale. I should have a review for you by Friday or so, and in it I'll try and throw where I'd put it on this ranking, but there you have it. I'd love to hear your placement for the Oz features in the comments area down below. Thanks for watching, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Peace.